Maura, thank you so much for being here and for always for your willingness to share your journey as a human, a fellow paddler, if we can say it that way, and as a leader. So today, I'd love to hear you share with others who are going to be here on this paddle platform about why core values. Why for you have you started and kept paddling through your values awareness journey?
Short answer is it has absolutely changed my life. Um, we've been working together for many years, and when I first met you, Christine, you will remember that I was having a healthy amount of conflict with another leader of an organization in my world, and I kept trying to figure out who was right, who was wrong, how to work a situation, how to manipulate it, maybe, how to get ahead and not lose ground and all that. And you early on introduced the idea of me determining my own values, which clued me in to times when I, to use your terminology, had my volume turned up a little bit in some areas and maybe wasn't seeing things clearly because I was being influenced by a really loud value of my own. But where it really broke through for me was then going through an exercise of just trying to imagine what another person's values would be. And I am an empathetic person, and I could get into that headspace. And when I realized that just by the structure of our organizations and the way um, we are funded and the purpose that we each have and our missions are complementary but different, and those differences probably means that others' values may not be exactly the same as mine. And when I started to see that, I started to appreciate that there are no bad values, there are no wrong values, they're just different values. And I'm like, oh, maybe this is why we have these few conflicts because these two values are rubbing up against each other. And so that has been helpful, but going through the work of determining my values and then revising them over time, like I said, it's been many years and I've changed as a person. I've had major life events change. I've had career evolution. We had a pandemic. My priorities and values have evolved. And so I go back to reflecting on my values, and when I say they've changed my life, they've changed how I talk to my coworkers. I'll name my values for people. I'll start catching myself of, oh, I have a real value around accountability, and I can tell I'm probably overbuilding a system here because I think we need to be really held accountable, and maybe we are at the right level and I need to turn that down a bit. So I'll name it in my work with my colleagues. It it comes up in my dating life. I mean, it comes up everywhere where I just feel like it's a way to know me is to know my values and to have conversations about them.
So impactful, as you say, in just your being, your paddling through life. And the power, I hear the
Absolutely.
power of naming in there.
Yeah. I I mean I've always been a if you can name it, you can tame it kind of person. I do believe in that. And I do again, I've said accountability is one of my values, and so I feel like naming it is a level of accountability because um I'm calling out what, is in the room, and that I think is helpful. I also the maxim of clarity is kindness. I definitely believe in that. And I feel like the more forthright I can be about my own values, only will help people work better with me. And to the extent that they want to go on a journey and figure out their values, then I get something out of it too. I mean, that's why a couple of years ago, I invited you to join our 6-member executive team online and to work individually with each of them to go through a values exercise, and they could each identify their 5 core values. And you really wonderfully led us, facilitated a conversation where we could share our values and create some space where we could appreciate each other's values, and then have some private conversations one-on-one about some of the values. And that is where it really blew my mind open in this one instance where I have worked with an individual for decades and we get along very well. It's a very healthy working relationship. And yet, I knew I I was only able to get so far with this person. And it was fine. That was fine. But I have a different kind of level of relationship with others on my team. And it was during the values exercise that I learned that one of their core values is privacy. They said to me, one of my core values is privacy. I know exactly why that's my value. I know where it came from in childhood. It's never going to change. I'm not going to tell you what it's based in because it's my value. But they said, and I know that probably drives you nuts because, man, you are an open book. You will tell everyone everything. And once I learned that that was their value, it made me realize, oh my gosh, I really do know this person very well. I am in, this is as in as a coworker is going to get. And it turned down my own desire to connect even more with this person. And later on, I can look at ways that we've interacted and realize that I am supporting her more by knowing this value and not pushing and not, going for that deeper engagement, but instead focusing on what we need to focus on. And I believe that I am a better supervisor for knowing this about this person, as just one example.
It's such a telling example because you wouldn't have known, right? The irony of it. There's no way
Right,
to found that out.
right. Yeah.
More I'm hearing, and I know this from our the time that we've spent together and the work that we've done, that a lot of inner work around values, I'm hearing you describe about how it helps you with the outer world and with others around you. Can you
Yep.
say a little bit about that? About your own keeping yourself on track as well
Yes.
as well as what
Um, it has it's amazing to me how often I notice my values. And it does give me a framework to do the internal reflections about why something may be bothering me, for example. Um, we all have the days where you're just off or an event happens and it's just not sitting right with me or in my heart or in my gut or wherever it's hitting. And I won't know what is going on. And then when I think about my values, it's like, oh, another one of my values, for instance, is authenticity. And there are people I deal with, but also sometimes just internally for myself, I won't be grounded and I will realize that I am being performative and I am not being authentic. Again, for me, that may be being an open book. But when I'm veering away from my values, they call me back because I get that unsettled feeling and I feel like it's a really powerful tool that now I know myself better and it gives me something I can check in on about how am I doing and or is what I'm feeling a misalignment of my values. And sometimes it's not, but sometimes it is, and it gives me something to then course correct based on.
and it sounds like a in some ways an efficiency for you now. Instead of the gut feelings, the wondering, the not being able to name it, or for some people they get stuck in their own heads and overanalyze. I'm extrapolating from what you said. Can you
Yeah.
say that that feels resonant for you? And it turns down.
Absolutely. And you know that now we're getting onto one of my other core values is efficiency. So if there is a short circuit way that I can move forward quicker, I'm looking for it. And so I appreciate that I can sort of check through these things, and it does make things go faster, and it can happen in real time. When I'm on a Zoom or in a meeting or in a conversation, I don't have to go read a chapter of a book to analyze in an academic sense what is going on here, but I can just go through and check myself. Efficiency in meetings is another way that sometimes it shows up. I find myself rushing through a conversation, and I'm like, hold on. I think my efficiency value's turned up a little bit, and I can slow this down a bit.
And that can create a tension. It's very common to have two core values that both matter so much to us and creates this tension between them. What might be the one that the efficiency one is pulling against?
Um, One of my other values is intentionality. And intentionality takes reflection and time. For me, it takes quiet, and that is harder for me to do efficiently. You can't rush through determining what your intention is. So they can be in conflict with each other, but instead, what I think I often do is I do some preparatory work and I go into hard conversations with some intentionality, and then that's a more efficient way um, process. So, for instance, it was in your paddling book that where I have these meetings that I thought emotions would be high. I often would come out of these meetings not feeling great. I recognized that there was a pattern here. I didn't know how to break the pattern. Through my work with you, I was able to ultimately figure out what was going on with that pattern, what was being triggered, and why was I reacting that way, and what were the common themes that led to it. And so, because of that value of intentionality, it was worth it to me to spend time I kind of color coded these meetings on my calendar when I thought I was at risk of this. And I had a process that I followed based on our work together that I could go into those meetings with a somewhat methodical approach where I would remind myself of certain tenets and beliefs and history and open myself up to stay curious and different things. And I was very successful in then reducing the number of meetings that had to be color coded on my calendar because I wasn't finding that they were so upsetting to me. And in the end, that's a more efficient way of doing work rather than getting through a tough meeting and then stewing over it, and yeah, not being able to move on.
And what I hear you describing now, if we think of our very over helpful brains that give us either or thinking, they can set us up to say it's either efficient or it's intentional.
Yep.
And what you're accessing is what Jim Collins in his classic book, Good to Great, calls the genius of and, intentional and efficient. Find the value in that tension.
Yep.
That's such an apt example of that.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Maura, thank you for being an open book, for your willingness to share with others like this. And as I love to wish you, happy paddling.
Thank you, Christine.